And then you need.
Sorry, it stopped when I had to jump off. I'm so sorry, Aditya.
That's fine. That's fine, Giti. So once you know that you have a toolbox to support you in these recovery strategies, your confidence jumps twice the levels when you encounter such situations, and it doesn't let you put down. You react to those situations with a motivated enthu, and then doing that again and again makes it into practice so much that is when you become an expert at handling those situations and you elevate your career. So the talk I will structure, I will try and cover most of the things within the 50 minutes, and I'll leave last 5 to 10 minutes for all the Q&A that gets posted in the chat. Feel free to put your comments or questions in the chat and we can take it towards the end. So why are we discussing this topic? Isn't standard project management sufficient for it? We know that there is a toolbox already provided to us from PMI and various other bodies where we know that what is the standard way of approaching a situation while managing a project. But then you encounter certain situations that are not textbook, and if you don't, if you're not facing a situation that is not from textbook, probably you will never have the answer in the textbook. It's there in terms of approach and guidance, but it will never be a tactical solution. And that is why we need to go through this. So, I mean, I don't know how many of you follow Confucius. I follow him for a lot of quotes that I feel very relevant in today's world. So he once said that, a superior man is aware of his mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistake of others. So many people have already invented the wheel. Why to reinvent the wheel when you can reinvent the car the better way, right? So you will already have a toolbox learning from other people who have done it so many times in their career, and rather you can pitch forward to how to quickly use out of the 20 tools you can have in your toolbox to remediate that situation or to de-risk that situation. So what are some early signs? Just sharing some experiences here. So 4 key early signs that I've seen in my career. One is as and when you try to really interact with your client, the first situation you will face is a loss in customer confidence. So if there is a loss in customer confidence, it will be very evident with the talks, with the expectation the customer will set with you. Probably it will lower down with some time. And then the second, declining quality. Your own team members will struggle to perform, sometimes due to the challenges that you're putting forward to them, but it will eventually break the ethos of the team to be able to give similar quality or similar throughput in terms of outcomes. If you are managing an agile project, you will always see that the team burnout rate is increasing. That's one of the metrics that you will often see. The third is team morale and ownership. As in when team faces these challenges often, the morale of the team and the ownership goes down. People will be reluctant in your team to take up a situation whenever you delegate to them as an action. And fourth, often you will see while managing yourself and going to the client yourself, you'll see there are some missed deadlines, upcoming timeline risks that you will often see in your plan and communications. These are some early signs where you see, okay, there is a trouble coming my way. Our project is definitely not in good health. It needs some remediation or some de-risking so that this doesn't repeat. It is not going north, but rather going south. And a normal approach, while we always have, is to try and find causes whenever we face such situations. And this is normally where it will lead to. Often you will say leaders finding, okay, there is scope creep, so it's fine, it goes that way. Okay, UAT issues are there if you're handling an IT project, it's fine, it goes that way. Quality issues, if you're handling a construction project, it's fine, it goes that way. It's a known issue. Cost overrun, probably in most often it happens in the construction projects. And it's just so normal to have it. It has become a norm that we live every day. IT infra delays. any project these days without the digital setup doesn't happen. You need the infrastructure to be there. And then unhappy stakeholders. Often when it happens, we take it with a pinch of salt and say, okay, you cannot satisfy a person every time, right? But then it has happened so many times, manifold, that it has now become a norm. And that is where we struggle to look beyond what and why it is happening. So this, when we categorize our problem in these buckets, our analysis is shallow. Probably we are not going deep enough into the problems. And that's why we always need to go through a tool that I often use in my projects or my situations that we call 5 why. Questions yourself 5 why, at least 5 times why, if not 6 or 7, till you find the root cause and not just focus on the cause. So a good example is, the IT infra issue that we just saw. And then if you see that on a particular date, I was not able to kick off or, perform a scheduled task for a project, then I ask myself why. If you see this example on the screen, probably. So I faced it. I asked why, and a colleague answered me, no, it never worked timely in past. It's an expectation. Okay, I should have aligned my plan better. Okay. The second time I asked myself why it never worked timely in past, I got to know that, it only works after escalations. And why it works after escalations? Because the process is email based. Why is it email based? Why cannot I talk to the person? Because it is vendor driven. It's not handled in house. Why it's vendor driven and why vendor driven is impacting my process? Because there is 7 days SLA that a vendor can take to respond. So probably the root cause in all these projects, not just one project, but entire portfolio going south every time, is because we have a vendor-driven process on the IT infra readiness, which has a 7-day SLA. So either on every project, I should have a 7-day early kickoff date, or I should change the SLA. So if I do not identify what is the disease, I can never give a medicine, or I can never live a healthy lifestyle that can elevate my project's health to a better level. So I will again revisit these causes now with a perception of root causes. So whenever we view these causes, let's always view them with a KPI lens. As in project scope is a KPI lens. If project scope is going down south, it is increasing. It is an area that we often call as low control zone. Project scope is largely not in control of a project manager, but rather on the specialist and stakeholders. So why the project scope is going out of control? Probably it can be because of poor planning. Insight is important. Probably, it could be because of poorly defined project objectives, ineffective change management process. Sometimes the clients are not ready to align with the change control process, or sometimes it is not implemented fairly. Maybe it's also an issue with poor stakeholder engagement, and often we are only engaging with them while validating on what is the scope and not throughout the process. Or it could be our own specialist is at fault here and the requirement gathering was not sufficient at the first place. And probably we can go a level deeper from here itself if we ask why. Each of these problems can help you take to the right root cause. Similarly, for schedule, I'll just take one example from the screen here, not scroll through every one of these. But for example, if you see poor planning is at fault here, if we see, even if some of our leaders come and point us, it is not the client, it is not the scope, but probably the way you plan the project, it's not sufficient, and that's why it went south. And then you introspect. Is it a shallow work breakdown structure that I have created? Is my work breakdown structure not deep enough? Does my work breakdown structure don't start with a verb every time, do X or do Y? Rather, I'm using very generic terms in my plans like risk management, communication management. If I don't mark it as verb, I will never be able to identify an owner for that, who needs to do what. And then probably it's lacking interdependencies. Probably I would have kicked off before noticing there was a dependency on the IT infra readiness. The developers cannot develop from the first day. So only when you have this introspect, you can always arrive at the root cause. And the situation we are always in, sometimes and very, very rare times, it allows you to take a corrective action after you are in a mess. Okay. But largely it is expected that you foresee these things coming. The moment you focus on those 4 symptoms of a diseased project or a trouble project, then you can apply this toolbox to where it is leading to. Similarly, quality. Quality is a very, very important parameter when we are delivering construction projects. Proper quality control on everyday basis. If I am constructing a cement plant, let's say, and even if I leave a single nut bolt at the level of 200 feet tower, and if it accidentally falls on someone, it is a big safety issue. That is how critical a quality control process is when doing construction projects. So if we deviate from that, we see it normal going that way, that we can recover from that, all those expectation is fair. But if you as a project manager are not equipped to identify that coming before anyone else points to you, that is where you lose in the game. So you should be fairly equipped before anyone else or any other report pointing it out to you. You should be proactively calling it out as a risk or an issue and have an addressal plan around it, a remediation plan around it, or sometimes a mitigation plan around it. If you're well experienced, you will probably see this coming to you much before than others. No matter which industry you are in, you will always have the stakeholders around you who would be, in various shapes and sizes, right from your sponsor to your day-to-day supervisor in the project, client side, or an in-house project manager who might be a clone of you on the other side, trying to judge your every move. But keeping them satisfied is a game that you'll always have to play in all your assignments. One good tool that I use every time, to see this coming my way, if there is any deviation in that, is I always prepare a stakeholder register whenever I start my project. Always mark your stakeholders by name in the register. Have an engagement plan, whether they are, you need their support or you need to satisfy them or you need to engage them on a particular milestone. Always have that marked in that engagement register. And then it will help you focus throughout the journey if you have a look at that register every week once. Just 5 seconds of rolling the eyes over it will keep you very true to your profession and your responsibilities. But what happens if someone is unsatisfied? You can treat it as a people problem, but trust me, very often I have seen that whatever we perceive as people problem in stakeholder zone is often a process challenge or an expectation challenge. Sometimes we do not set the right expectation. Sometimes the expectation blows beyond what we have been trying to assume as a scope. And sometimes the devil lies in between. That is the understanding between the two people. And that change management, that expectation management, that communication management, probably if you look at your process groups in the PMI, PM box, most of these are focused around these. The true yielding of all those actually happen when your stakeholders are satisfied, and happens when they see that you're delivering the value that they envision from the project. And stakeholder is your best friend because he is the person that who will give you the true symptom whether a project is going north or south. Everything else is left for you to understand or judge, but a stakeholder will always give you the vibes that you can easily judge whether it's going north or south. So we've been through some of the experiences, gyan around what to do, how best to do. But what if we are in a situation? What should be my toolbox around it? How to handle such situation? So here I'll leave a few thoughts around what are ideal recovery strategies that are followed in high-stake projects, evolving complexity projects, emerging technology projects. What's different with emerging technologies is that you often explore the unknown. something that someone has not done before. So the accountability on a project management manager is double fold, because you cannot rely on someone else's predefined work breakdown structure, predefined roles and responsibility, predefined RACI, and even predefined response models. You will have to build it your own way while you work on some new technology or some new design patterns, even in the construction industry, where you explore it with innovation alongside your project. So you will have to be much better prepared to handle the unknown. So first, I will just cover what I just narrated. So always have a KPI lens. KPIs are the indicators that tell you how good your projects are performing. There are 6 KPIs that I often use in my projects, although I see the industry very much focus on just scope, schedule, and cost. But with the evolving landscape, value, for example, in this year's PMI is top priority. All the research shows that whether the project is successful or not, you're not judging it by the parameter of whether it's delivering value to the end sponsor or the end user. No matter you're good on scope, schedule, or cost, it's poor performance. The project doesn't go through. It doesn't give the end value. So scope, schedule, cost, top on the list. I think it's everyone's bread and butter. I don't need to delve deeper in that. But quality stepped in because of physical world projects. We are no more limited to the virtual world IT projects that are taking the front seat in current disrupted landscape. Value to sponsor, benefit to sponsor is something that we can keep monitoring throughout the project. Often what I do, I force my project manager, my team members to put up, whenever they are putting up, for example, the status reports. Normally, it's a very ideal way when people are just focused on the shallow, high-level reporting. If they will often give, just a red, amber, green status on those reports. You should ask yourself or themselves, if you're working in a team setup, as a champion of excellence, you should always force for, to have that at least on the scope, schedule, and cost separate ranks. That means go from one-dimensional reporting to multi-dimensional KPI reporting. If your project clearly outlines, if the scope of work clearly outlines what is the benefit you will yield out of this project, then that should be a parameter that you should report weekly on your project status. If that is in green or not. With the latest changes coming in, have I lost my way to achieve those benefits? Have it become more costly to achieve those benefits? That also you should keep an eye. If my scope is going red, having more changes are not helping me, we should rethink over it. That will keep you very true focused on what to accommodate as a change and when to accommodate as a change. So, and again, going from qualitative scale of reporting to quantified scale of reporting. So often people report project statuses as red, amber, green, but always have them quantified in the report. If let's say your scope is going amber or red, am I having 2 change requests, 1 change request, 7 days worth of effort, 5 days worth of effort? If my schedule is going red or amber, always ask your. This will eventually keep your communication very crisp and crystal to your stakeholder, and stakeholder will upfront give you a symptom whether he is comfortable, whether he has the appetite to take that kind of quantitative impact on the project, and then you know that your project is in trouble zone or not. But if you do not communicate it quantified way and just keep it qualitative, probably it will be too late in the game when you will realize that even the stakeholder will realize it too late in the game that what is the impact only after it has happened. Another one, which is not the truth. The best practices say that your project plan should always be tracked there should always be recommendation on deviations. Even if you can, report these KPIs at a task level, at least at the top task level, it will give you where it is going amber and red, and accordingly, you should always re-baseline the plan. At least on a monthly basis, if you're doing a long-term project, at least on a weekly basis, if you're doing a short-term project. So your project plan should be a living document that should be revised often to take you the way where the success lies. Otherwise, despite all the effort that your team might be doing, you might be doing managing the project, the end outcome, if it is not a benefit or a value or a satisfaction at stakeholder level or the quality you wanted to achieve, no matter who's at fault, even if the stakeholder himself came with a couple of requirements that delayed you. But then the project would not be a success. And this is what all our babies are, right? Our projects are our babies, right? We have to nurture them so that they go into the world, they are successful, and they're adopted. The solutions are adopted. So next 3 slides are very critical in this talk. Probably the crux of all this talk on how to handle such situations proactively rather than reactively. So as and when you become more experienced as a project manager, you will have your ready models around it, how to handle such situations, because it all comes with experience in the way we talk and we no longer are dependent upon the textbook. But taking it one by one, the scope deviations, for example, this is considered a high impact and low control zone for a project manager. So how to de-risk and control a project scope? Very, very crisp tips around this. Always propose a scope freeze to steering committee whenever a change is happening or adopted. Never leave any scope discussion hanging in between. The first opportunity that you get with the steering committee, propose a scope freeze, re-baseline, again propose a scope freeze, have it as a disciplined way of working. You will never land. And if you set those expectation governance, everyone understands that they will have to give you a symptom the moment they're talking about a change in scope, and it will never be in the gray zone. So always when you're moving from one phase to another of your project, you should always run through the steering committee. What is the scope for this phase? What is the scope for this sprint, let's say? Okay. If you put it in front of their eyes, they will always give you a symptom. For the scope for that matter, always. Even PMI has to follow. But then where you can press the lever is the commercial impact and setup behind that change control. As project managers, you should not just be under a leadership who just asks you for status reports and you become, you work in a slave and master relationship or you just delivering the report that you ask for. You should always have proactive accountability and visibility of what is the commercial setup on the project. Even if not shared with you, you should always ask from them. And once you have the commercial setup with you, whether it's a fixed price project or the time and material project, you know what change how it will impact my commercial setup on the project. And so you can highlight it so that the person, the stakeholder in front of you would give you the right symptom if you're going north or south. Anytime you have got a change, stakeholders change request should never be taken as a matter of as consultant trying to recommend how it impacts your projects going for south or north. You should always do a prioritization around it and suggest and negotiate the changes. That is where you keep your control project. Don't hesitate to negotiate and prioritize with the end user or project manager. The same person might behave a little weird when you reach out to them with such asks, but it will always be appreciated as they see the outcome on the project. If you see there is a very, very large scope deviation on the project, for example, there were 3 processes in scope to automate and you discovered a 4th process, do not hesitate to recommend that this should be handled as a separate project or break this project into a smaller sub-project. you're open to do that. You have all the empowerment in the world to realize that you have, as a project manager, it's in your hands to take those decisions. When we realize, patients are very, very populous. So we will often have layers of management on an engagement. Yeah.
Aditya, hi. Sorry, you got unmuted.
Thank you. So,
Yeah, we can hear you.
We should realize as PMs, we have all the. Am I audible?
You are.
All right, I'll continue.
So,
sure. So we know that we live in populous environments, multi-layered management setups, constructs, and often there is a confusion who has the authority. Do I as PM have authority? Yes. You are the owner of the project. You have all the authority in the world. If not to take a decision, to recommend it to state committee or your leadership sponsors, you are the person. If you're not doing that, your outcome would be sidelined. And one game changer, suggestion that is not written in stone. We often say that, okay, I'm working on from a agile to a hybrid mode. Feel free to migrate from a waterfall model to an agile model in between the project. PMI doesn't restrict it. That is where the world is going hybrid. So that's a realization a few years back I had in my career. It helped me great deal, trust me. And you should always feel free around it. Project methodologies are often driven even by organizations sometimes. They want you to be very, very true to what they have suggested as a model to be followed in client engagement, let's say. So there might be a proper channel through which you can go, but you can always have a feedback for deviation. It is never written in stone. Even the people creating those models will often realize that sometimes it becomes obsolete and needs revision, correction. And that is where you became a champion of excellence. So another symptom that you would often see from all the talks that I had in the initial slide was, you will see that, there are delays. How to pull back from delays? This is again a high control and high impact zone, because as a project manager, you're expected to control delays all the time. But
Aditya, I'm
few
so
quick
sorry
symptoms.
to interject. I'm so sorry to interject. I think your voice is going in and out. Maybe some network issue. I thought it was me, but I checked with a couple of people and then people have put it in chat as well.
Okay, can someone please confirm? I've taken a pause.
Yeah, it is better now. Yeah, it's. Can you try speaking something?
Yeah, I'm here and I can able to hear you.
Yes,
Just give me a nudge if.
It's better now.
Sure.
Thank you.
That's always fine to keep a check. That's how we be agile, right? So again, if we see there is a symptom, projects are suffering with delays. The moment we come across that, what should we do as PMs? Should I just report there is a delay? Should I just report there is a transactional delay and we need to come into issue management and a risk management mode? No, there is much more beyond that you can do. Identify the shape, size, scale of this delay. Report that. Yes, that's your bread and butter exercise. What beyond that? All your team members are your hands and fingers into the project. Coach them, to deliver those messages upfront to you. Talking with them on stand-ups every day, you realize what are the symptoms. Are they burning out? Then you take that action proactively. Else, it will be a reactive state of affairs. Always, I mean, and this is the most neglected agile ceremony that I've seen through my career, through various organizations, is the lesson learned workshop because it takes the least priority while delivering the original scope of project. And people often see, okay, they will be learning, but I cannot use it real time. Probably the time organization will implement it, it will be another project. But your lesson learned workshop should be at a sprint level. So that is where you get your true learning moving from one sprint to another. If you know the development estimates are going 20% beyond what you originally scoped for, if you know there is a 20% burnout rate trying to achieve what we already envisioned for, then you know there should be a 20% movement of scope or schedule for the remaining sprints. That is how your lesson learned workshop help you. And lesson learned is again always perceived as, like negative outcomes where we went south. But lesson learned is also about what you did good on the project. Probably if you motivated one of your team members and their performance or, the throughput rate was better than other team members, take that as a lesson and multiply that gamified model to other team members. That also learning I had few years down the line that, we often perceive lesson learned workshop as identify what went wrong, but it is also a good tool to identify what went good. So you should always follow a few sanitization tips on all your artifacts. Wherever you are naming a task of a project, always ensure it starts with a verb. Because when you say terms like communication management on a project plan to a stakeholder, it means everything inside the communication. Okay. No matter if in the respective subtasks you would have got named owners different for different thing. But the moment he sees a top task level communication management and a PM's name written under it, he assumes everything is to be done by a PM. So always have it starting with a verb, like creating, project go live communication, documenting project go live communication, documenting change control document. So if you started with a verb to draft, to document, to create, to develop, to test, you will never miss out breaking that into subtasks. Then that is when you know that, okay, your work breakdown structure is not at the absolute level and it leaves buffer for assumptive tasks that you see new tasks in your projects and they are suddenly starting to delay your project. No, they were always there. You didn't break down your work breakdown structure into sufficient detail. And the tip is the moment you start putting it as verb, you will always go down to the last level. You will never miss it. And when you have it at the lowest level, all your task as well as risk, issues, assumption, actions, you should always have a named owner and a time box around it. We often realize, okay, some SLA needs to be corrected. When? By whom? That is more important a dimension rather than the basic task itself. And then always you have all the liberty to suggest a scope correction. All the liberty in the world to suggest that, for my project to go green, I need to break this into two sub-projects probably. Sometimes the scope and the delays are so large. We always feel enabled about it. And the most important one, this is where, the people judgment comes in. I always say that, the P of projects is people, quote unquote. Uh, Managing people on your projects is basically where you will spend 90% of your time through the day. You will always have something in plan that, okay, I should go by textbook. I should have, XYZ artifacts and calculations always ready, reports always ready. But every day you start your day, there will be something challenging coming from people because they are the variables in your project. And it is in all shapes and sizes from external stakeholders to internal team members. And keeping them motivated, having a good feedback channel with them is something that you should champion through the years. And this is where your experience comes into more into play than any other thing. This is where you go beyond the textbook. This is again a very high control. If you realize your powers as a project manager, you have very high control on this because you are the thread between all the members on the project. But this is also a very high impact zone. Anything that goes wrong with one person can be easily diseased with others. So it is a very high control zone and it needs to be maintained in very high control. So one very good tip that I learned from one of the movies I watched a few years back, I am sure most of you would have watched it. It's called Chuck the India. So in that there was a match between India and Korea, and the team was quite down. And the coach asked them to follow a strategy that the Koreans normally used to follow, that is called man-to-man marking. Sometimes when you're in a very diseased project, whenever a lot of hearsay or grapevine, multiple people coming in, flooding you with feedbacks, talking about you in a different forum, how do you handle that situation? You need to go into a man-to-man marking mode. In your internal constructive team setup, you should identify who are my stakeholders in a stakeholder register. For every stakeholder to be managed either with support or with guidance or with updates, there should be a name identified against every stakeholder who from your team will be handling this particular stakeholder to engage how we did in the start on the project. If there is a leadership who goes much beyond your day-to-day communication and only coming on the steering committee, probably you should ask your leadership, can you constantly be in touch with this person before he comes to the steering committee? That's how you do man-to-man marking. And if there are any symptoms, please let me know before the steering committee call, before we go wrong on the steering committee call. So if there are developers working from their side or even stakeholder or quality checks people, or even third party quality control people working on the project, there should be respective stakeholders or members from your team who should be aligned as part of stakeholder engagement plan to have one-on-one interaction with them. And one-on-one interaction doesn't mean that every time you have to keep calling them as customer care and troubling them, spamming them. But it is just a normal human connect that you should have with them. If you know that your projects are going through exclusive quality check from a separate quality COE, employ a quality manager from your side who takes a separate channel with them on a weekly or a monthly basis, so that all those noise doesn't come into your project's tier co meets. That's what's called man-to-man marking. Always people have the key to turn on your frustration or motivation levels. So every time there is a people problem, you have to recall yourself that you have to respond calmly and constructively. Again, another lesson that I learned and shared in the previous slide was that lesson learned. You should always be open to learn from the lessons that you have had in the past in a constructive way. People often feel what not to do, but you should always focus what could help in your project real time is what to do. What went good? What did I do absolute best in my last sprint that would help sail all the other sprints? That key shining factor you have to identify. If sometimes the issue or the stakeholder feedback goes down so much that you see that irrecoverable. For example, if you're having a CSAT score setup, very common in many companies across the globe, you always take CSAT, and there is a CSAT mentioning, okay, we have downgraded you from A plus to C minus because your project never seems to be ending. What do? You feel free to go beyond the project plan. Feel free to take a pause for a day. If you see your team is at risk, your team is at the heart of this issue that they're not performing, take a break, take an offsite. A day's delay can save you 20 days of delay. That's where you resurface, recover from that situation as a team. If you see, no, the issue is at stakeholder side on the other side of the table, feel free to pull in a ad hoc steer co. Again, a learning that I had. many times it happens that, people see that there are issues, but people say, okay, the steer co is next month. I will have time till that time. I'll prepare my report that time. And obviously it will get highlighted. But again, the setups never stop you to put up a ad hoc steer co meet in the calendars. Have a conflict resolution steer co. Steer cos can be called for agenda. Status report meetings can be called ad hoc with defined and focused call agenda. Remember that. And that is where, with your already existing knowledge on how to handle which stakeholder, you can go on a discussion and probably cut down all the noise because before it becomes a disruption on your project. So, to this, I'm in the last leg of my talk here. What is my food for thought here? Often we see, okay, issues are happening, risks, known risks are repeating, and we always see it from a perception of remediate. But you go a level above others when you see it with a lens of de-risking it, identifying it before it happens, taking proactive step before it happens, and that obviously you will get polished through it as you practice more and more. Your toolbox will no longer be limited to some factors that you will identify new. Probably in your own career, you will have patterns around it that have already helped you shape up a lot. But then you ask yourself, are you following all those best practices that can save you time doing this, that can give you the right symptoms? For example, I can talk at length, we can discuss at length on how to identify if my schedule is going down south. But probably most of us, including me in my career, have been at fault where I've been not been following, what is the SPI on my project, the schedule performance index? Am I on a weekly basis, keeping the EVM analysis updated? And mostly nothing to blame on any single person or an approach on the project, but mostly because we as project managers get so overwhelmed by the nuances, daily nuances of the projects, that we often lose, the sight and importance of these basic checks that we often have already learned through the PMP, or even when we see that the stakeholder doesn't ask for it. What he's asking is a plain simple report in a red, amber, green, and that's working for me. While I focus on, getting the project on its toes, and I lose my focus on my own quality checks. So here, when you do it multiple times, your experience will become your X factor. And then right now you will start with a remediation, but slowly you will become a champion, and probably, couple of years down the line or in a year down the line, you will be, championing your team on how to do it better. So this is where I leave you with this talk, and probably we can see if there are any questions. And back to you, Deepti, if you've
Well,
already collated some.
yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Aditya. I think you've already given us a food for thought, how we can actually work on our projects which are actually in a verge of getting derailed, and how we can bring them back. And um, there are a couple of questions which have been put up by our members in the chat, but I think there will be more questions. So this is a note for everyone. Feel free to raise your hand, and then we'll take up your questions one by one. But we'll start with Manav's question. So Manav is asking that man-to-man marking is something like programming, or doesn't it more sound like a micromanagement? And how we can make more flexible?
Okay, and I hope my voice is better audible this time. Okay. So yeah, man-to-man marking is not
It
exactly
is.
like pair programming. Pair programming is like, if I what I my perception of it is like extreme programming, where you make your team members sit in pairs or in more of group of people trying to do the same task divisively, but yet doing it together at the same time. But man-to-man marking is more like a strategic micromanagement. Yes, it is micromanagement, but it is strategic micromanagement. It is not tactical micromanagement, like checking on whether you have logged in or not. No, we are not spamming people, but we are just keeping an eye together as a team. And when we start the project, we all decide on it. We are three people, let's say the project lead, the delivery lead, and let's say the account lead on the project. And we see that, okay, there are three people on their side with a similar hierarchy. Why not manage everyone one-to-one on the perception level? What is their perception on the where the project is going? And that's where you create an organic channel rather than not reaching out to the, let's say, the client CEO directly, and rather than reaching out through your hierarchy, and always having a quick check on that before you go into a critical presentation or key meeting in your projects, so that you get the symptoms beforehand.
Great. Thank you for answering that. Hope your question is answered, Manav. So while I take on Upendra question, there was a question put up earlier as per the slide on KPI that you had, slide number 18. So Viraj wanted to know, value to sponsor should not be at project go no go stage. Is it the PM's role or the project board, or and here to the sponsor and senior user? So basically he wants to understand whose role is it.
So again, KPI at phases or at milestone will land you into trouble, because that's one day you wake up and get surprised. So the more you make it a daily dashboard thing, I often do it this way, and I will just share the best practice I follow. Even if I don't have a ready setup in my organization at different levels for scale, I always prepare a dashboard view on my own PowerPoint slides. And when I start my day, before I go into 5 minutes before I go into the stand-up, I just look at that. Where is the health? Probably that 15 minutes that I get with the team, should I focus on scope, or should I focus on schedule, or should I focus on people? If you are prepared that way and not dependent even on your team, that okay, the reactive project management here could be I go into a stand-up call and I realize where it is going, and then through the day I will think, okay, then this is not going correct. I will again trouble my team, again get on an end of day stand-up, and probably next day I will have a remediation action. That's where you lost a critical day. But if you're proactively having your own KPI dashboards created, it's very simple. In an Excel project plan, you just need to see whether what is your revised date, actual date, and forecasted date, right? All the ETC and ETA formula that the PMI provides us, right? And then you see, okay, today where should I focus? Right. So that saves you a day every day. I mean, every week, if you're saving even a day, doing all those discussion running around, you're saving your quality time so that you can focus on better tasks rather than create just clerical follow-ups.
Got it. But then whose role would that be as a project go?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Your voice was breaking, Deepti.
I was saying then who has the final say? Project go no go.
It will always be the stakeholder and the sponsor who would be absorbing the value. Definitely, you can only proactively keep an eye on it, right?
Okay.
You can always raise a flag. Okay, I'm in red zone, I'm in amber zone, I need to be heard. But probably you will never have the final say that, yeah, this is a success. You will always have to take a validation or approval from the stakeholder sponsor. Yes, what you have perceived, what you have published at a report makes sense to him, or probably he will correct you on the go.
All
So
right.
final say
Thank
will
you.
always be with them.
Great. I just want to clarify it for the audience.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question that we have from Upendra. He's asking what should be our approach when we can't foresee which future task can probably be a red flag in future.
No, good. See, again, that's where the symptoms are very qualitative. You can always focus on a set or segment, but unless we have the very, 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 well-defined scope or breakdown structure, it is very difficult to say at one go where you should focus. Okay. But yes, at least if I just presume my project to be a body, like a human body, you at least know where the symptoms are, whether it is in your in your limbs, or you're having a headache. If you do not recognize that, probably you will spend your 4 weeks or 5 weeks trying to remediate a wrong piece of limb, right? So it's very difficult to identify where exactly and what is the problem. It will only happen organically, like you normally do right now also. But what this scoping or identifying symptoms will give you, it will save you that 80% of your effort that you're trying to diagnose the entire body rather than trying to only diagnose the diseased part of it. That is the only efficiency it will bring. You're doing nothing wrong right now. It is just trying to make you more focused.
Understood. Hope, Upendra, this answers your question. If you have further questions, feel free to raise your hand. Also, this is for everyone. In case you have questions, please feel free to raise your hands and we'll take up your questions. But yeah, thank you so much for answering questions from your audience, from our audience. I'm sure now everyone's wiser. They know how to bring back their projects from Setback, and as in with that, I think it's almost time as well. And Aditya, I would like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart and from entire North India chapter for taking out time. As in, I understand everyone's very occupied these days. These days work has been very hectic for every individual, but still you took out time, and then that too on a Sunday morning, and then took up this session for all of us. So it's a thank you from us. We are planting a tree under your name, under Trees of India Foundation, Grow Trees Foundation. And in fact, I'll share this with you, PDF, so you'll be able to locate the exact location of the tree where it has been planted. So thank you so much for taking out time, Aditya.
Hey, thank you so much, Dipti. This means a lot. Yeah, thank you, and thank you for taking time on Sunday. Yeah. Again, I know how hustle it is.
Yeah, thank you. And to our audience who is here, as Aditya was saying, that thank you to all of you who took out time and wanted to understand more about this topic. So you can claim one PDU after attending this session. So you need to go to PMI-CCRS dashboard and click on report PDU, click on course or training, and course provider would be PMI North India chapter. And you already know the course name, which is Learning by 5 from Setback to Success. And the PDU claim ID is C118OF2KAJ. Course start date and end date would be today's date, April 6. And in case you have any challenge in claiming this PDU, you can reach out to me and you'll be able to gain one PDU under Vero. You can take screenshot. Let me do one thing. Let me put it up in the chat window as well, so that it is easy for you to copy the code from there. So I've pasted the PDU code here. Aditya, everyone wants to know your LinkedIn ID. So
I've just now LinkedIn in the window.
Yeah, great. If you can paste your LinkedIn ID here, so that our audience can connect with you. And then apart from that, people are asking me whether they can get hold of the PDF. So PDF will not be shared, but yes, definitely you can access the recording. It will be put up soon on our YouTube channel, and we'll be sharing the link. We'll be dropping you an email, and it will be put up as in a post will be put up on our LinkedIn channel as well. So once again, thank you everyone. And we'll see you soon with another interesting topic and with another speaker next month, and we'll keep hearing from you. And in case you have any suggestions, please ping me on LinkedIn and we'll take up those topics in future. So thank you again, Aditya. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dipti. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.